Hey guys, welcome to Bowhunting Soul. Today, what I wanted to talk about is I want to talk about Archer's paradox. You're gonna say, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. There's like 1,000 videos on Archer's paradox. There's 1,000 articles and forum, internet know-it-alls about Archer's paradox. Why are we gonna do another one? Well, first of all, I think Archer's paradox really is misunderstood. It is not explained very well, and it is commonly used as a term where it should not be used as a term. So we're actually going to go through and dispel some of these myths and what it applies to, what it doesn't apply to, and why it's important. So first of all, what is Archer's paradox? What have we been taught? Well, we've been taught that the arrow somehow mystically, magically curves its way at the shot around the riser so that the back of this arrow doesn't hit that riser. So at the shot, somehow this thing knows, do it this way, somehow this thing magically knows to curve around the riser and not hit this thing. And you've all seen, I'm sure, pictures of it or slow motion pictures of it where the arrow is kind of bending, it's doing this Dukes of Hazzard, kind of like tail kick, and then it kind of straightens out kind of thing. And we've always been told that, well, it's because the arrow, so that the arrow doesn't slap the riser, the back of the arrow doesn't hit the riser at the shot. Well, I don't know if you've ever actually talked to this arrow, but it's a tube. It's a simple tube. It's not a smart weapon. It doesn't have guidance. It doesn't have onboard, telemetry, knowing that, that it's going to have to kick its way around and bend a certain way around the riser, around the shelf, so it doesn't hit. So how does it really work, and how did this really come about? Well, it came about because traditional bows, they are designed to be shot with fingers, and they're designed to be shot with fingers because the riser, if you look at it, isn't cut as deep as a compound, let's say. And we are going to dispel a myth, by the way. The people that say that I got a compound here, I'm going to show you. The people that say the compounds, that Archer's paradox applies to that, you are wrong. It does not apply to that. Okay, Archer's paradox has nothing to do with a compound bow. Get it out of your head. I'm going to prove to you why. Anyway, so this is not cut past center. It's actually this is a Bear 59 Kodiak, and most Bear bows are cut to center. In other words, if you were to line up the string, dead straight along the limbs, and you actually put an arrow on here, and I'm going to try and do this as best I can for you guys. Actually, I'm going to exaggerate this a little bit. The arrow points outboard. It points away from the riser. Okay, so if this is dead straight, it's actually pointing outboard. From I'm a right-handed shooter, it's pointing left. Now, why is it doing that? Why isn't it pointing dead straight? Well, because again, traditional bows are designed to be shot with your fingers. Whether you're using a glove, whether you're using a tab. What happens when we draw back, and I'm not going to draw back here because I'm going to shoot my phone. What happens when we draw back with the string? We're drawing in a straight line. But when we let go, when we release the string, this has a little bit of side load to it. Again, pretty exaggerated. But it forces our fingers off the string. Now, for those of you still claiming that you can do like a dead release where you just fling your fingers open real quick, get that out of your head too. Does not happen, cannot happen. You cannot fling your fingers open fast enough to get out of the way of the string. What we do is when we let go, we release tension in our finger. Now, what happens is then the string kicks our fingers off one way, but every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So this being the fingers being flung, it has to get over the pads of our fingers, right? So then there's a side load that gets put on the string that then is imparted onto this guy. So what happens? Our tip is pointed to the left. If the nock were going in a straight line, then the bow or the arrow will go like that. It will kind of fly like this. When we release with our fingers, the string kicks over, and it actually kicks the back. It kicks the back of the arrow outboard. And what it does is it brings it back in line with the front, with the tip of the arrow, and it goes forward. Now it does a little bit of flexing a little bit, but that's why this thing always manages to clear toward the left, toward the outboard side. This is not like some smart weapon. It has no idea that there's a shelf over here that it needs to go one direction and not the other direction. That's never explained. Everyone seems to think that this thing magically and mystically just curves around the riser over here. That's not how it works. Now, bows that are more that are cut past center, where this window is even more, then it's not as pronounced. The arrow isn't pointing outboard as much. It's pointing more, in a bit of a straight line. So that changes tuning. But these bows, again, there's a reason why they're not cut well past center. Now there's some target bows that are cut a lot more, and they've got a plunger, and you can build out side plates, and you can get a dead center shot kind of thing. But the way archery came about, they figured, well, if this thing is going dead straight and it's coming off our fingers, well, this thing's going to be two sideways, because then the point would be straight, but then the back would be kicked out. Okay, so you guys getting this? One more time. It's like this, exaggerated before the shot, and then at the shot, it goes from this, curves, and it goes in a straight line, and it does a little bit of bending. Now, spine is important in this because there is two forces that's happening. One is the side load that's going, and then the other, let me put this over here. One is a side load, and then the other, of course, is like a bending load, because the nock is still trying to get pushed forward as the string's going forward, but there's also a side component to it. So it does need to flex a little bit like that, and it does need to do a little bit and to kind of damp it, to kind of absorb that hit. But that is really what archer's paradox is. Now, going to a compound. This here is my 2011 Elite Pure. I love this bow, by the way. I kind of built this. It's kind of like a Franken bow with limbs from various different Elites, and then I had this thing hydro dipped, and look at that. That kind of like a cool paint scheme. I love it. I really like it a lot. Smooth shooting. This is considered an old bow, by the way. This is a 2011. But if you notice on a compound, look how big this sight window is over here. The riser comes up the center, and it juts over this way, and then it goes up and it juts back over. You got this huge area right here. Okay, now we have a center shot arrow, meaning when an arrow is on this thing, the arrow isn't pointed out to the left or out to the right. It's pretty much dead straight. Now I know what you're gonna say. When you're moving and you're sending center shot and you're getting bare shaft or paper tuning or whatever, sometimes the tip of the arrow is pointed one way or another. Well, that's due to a couple things. That's not because of the way this thing's cut. It's because this thing flexes. Okay, I don't care what bow you have, especially an older one like this. At full draw, there's a lot of energy in here, and it does twist and flex a little bit. The biggest one is probably because if you're torquing your bow at the shot, it's dependent on you actually shooting. And the other one, of course, is cam lean. If the cams lean one way or another, or if the limbs kind of twist. I mean, the Elites are kind of older. The older Elites are kind of known for cam lean. Anyway, so these bows are designed to be shot in a straight line. That's why it's pretty damn close to center. Because why? Because that's the reason we use a caliper release. A caliper release, I'm not going to draw it back, pulls this thing back, in a dead straight line. And then when we do the trigger, the string goes in a dead straight line. It tracks straight, hopefully, true, between the center line of the bow and the center line of the limbs, and the string goes straight. It doesn't get kicked out sideways. And it's designed to push that arrow in a straight line. That's why with a well-tuned compound, spine, especially on the stiffer end of it, doesn't matter. You could be shooting a railroad spike. Okay, you still need a little bit of shock absorption, but it has nothing to do with Archer's paradox. There's no paradoxing, there's no moving sideways, there's no clearing of this. This all has to do with a traditional bow. This is also the same reason why some well-meaning people in the traditional world will talk to some of the guys coming over from compound, and I've read this before, and a compound guy or girl or whatever will say, well, I'm having a hard time with the release, I'm having a hard time getting a clean release, that kind of thing. Can I just use my release, you know, from my compound days on my traditional bow until I get used to shooting? And then, you know, well-meaning traditional archers will be like, oh yeah, sure, go ahead, use that until you get, you know, until you get your reps in, until you get know what you kind of want. This is not a good idea, because again, a traditional bow, most bows, I highly doubt they're going to buy some sort of like Olympic recurve where, you know, the shelf is cut, you know, a lot, and you know, you can almost do center shot, and you know, that's a different kind of bow. But for most bows, they're either cut to center or just a little bit past center, where the tip of the arrow is going to be pointed outward. Well, if you're not releasing the back of this arrow, the back of the string off your fingers, and you're not getting that, you know, you're not getting the kick that you need to align this to make it go in a straight line, well, then that arrow is going to go shoot off to the left, because the release again is pulling. You know, imagine with my caliper, it's pulling in a straight line and letting it go in a straight line. It's going dead straight, instead of off the fingers where pull in a straight line, but it kicks and it realigns the back of the arrow. So all you're really doing is you're reinforcing kind of bad, at least bad tuning. You're gonna get inconsistent groups. You're gonna get a wrong indication on spine, because it's going to want to go off to the left. It's not going to want to go straight, and I think it's just going to end up in more frustration. So the best thing you can do is be like, look, you know, teach them how to you know, properly anchor, how to release, how to all do all that stuff, but don't tell them to pull with the release, with the compound release on a traditional bow, because it's not designed to be shot that way. Conversely, while we're talking about it, I don't think this happens anymore. I think a lot of the, you know, 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s guys, you know, when they started shooting fingers when compounds came out, and they said, you know, maybe some people still do it. This is also a bad idea, because look how skinny. Look how, I mean, this isn't even, I mean, there's like skinnier cams now, because there's less, you know, it's all about speed, right? So with manufacturers these days, so the skinnier cams have a thinner track. They might even use a thinner string. So when you pull this thing back, you know, with your fingers, well, you're going to have a lot of, you know, side to side of the string, and I don't want to do it obviously, but when you let it go, well, this string isn't going to track true. It's not going to track true in this groove. What's going to happen is potentially the string is going to be out this way, and as the limbs unflex, you're going to derail this, and that's pretty much like dry firing. And this thing's going to, you know, you're going to break limbs, you're going to bend your cam. That's why with older bows, the cams are actually a lot thicker, a lot wider. The groove was a lot bigger. With a modern compound, last 15-20 years, don't even do it, because you really risk derailing this thing at the shot, because this is designed to be shot again, pulling the string in a straight line and letting it go in a straight line. So that's the difference. That's Archer's paradox. It does not apply to compounds, and it 100% applies to traditional bows. And the reason it does it is because of these fingers kicking the back of the arrow in line, so it can kind of realign, straighten out, not hit the shell, not hit the riser, and go in a straight line. So anyway, if you guys have any comments on this stuff, or want to disagree with me, whatever, great, leave comments below. I am going to leave a link to some of these products I use. You know, I've got the gold tip here. These are really, really good traditional arrows. I've actually started using these with my compound too. I actually ended up with, you know, cutting some Gold tip traditional is a little bit too short when I was tuning, other bows or whatever, and I thought, well, I don't want to throw them away. Turns out they work really well out of this compound. Super, super tough arrows. And I don't know if the gold tip sight explains Archer's paradox or anything like that, but now at least you're well armed when someone says, well, it magically kicks around the riser. No, it doesn't magically do that. This is not a smart weapon. It doesn't know what it's doing. It's all because of the way you're releasing it. So like, share, subscribe, and like I said, I'd love to hear your comments. And if you see this video, please come join our Facebook group too. We've got a Bowhunting Soul Facebook group, and it's open to anybody, traditional, compound, whatever, and we like to hear from you. So I'll talk to you guys later. Thanks.